Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. I want to raise two specific points, and then I'm looking forward to your questions. I want Canadians to know that from the beginning of this pandemic, we made one thing really clear. New Democrats are focused on getting help that people need. We're here to fight for you, and we're here to make sure that you get supports. People are worried about the climate crisis. We're going to fight as hard as we can to get more action so that we're protecting our environment. We're going to fight hard to make sure workers are not left behind. We're going to make sure we're fighting to have a recovery that actually focuses on people, not on shareholders and rich executives. We're going to make sure that people get the healthcare they need. We know that a lot of provinces right now and a lot of people are dealing with healthcare frontline worker shortages. So we're going to make sure we're going to fight to get more supports for you. We know that people are struggling to buy a house and affordability is top of mind. And we're going to fight hard to make sure people have a place to call home. They can afford a place to call home and that they get the supports they need to be able to make ends meet. We are here for you and we're going to fight for you. Donc, comme j'ai dit à plusieurs reprises pendant la pandémie, et je continue de dire ça, pour nous, les néo-démocrates, notre priorité, c'est d'aider les gens. Donc, on va toujours trouver des façons pour livrer les marchandises, pour rendre la vie plus facile, pour améliorer la vie des gens. Donc, on sait que les gens sont inquiétés par la crise climatique et on va se battre fort pour défendre notre environnement et pour s'assurer qu'on ne laisse pas à côté les travailleurs et travailleuses. On va aussi aider les gens qui ont peur maintenant à cause de la crise en santé. Je sais qu'il y a une vraie crise à travers le pays pour accès aux services de soins de santé à cause d'un manque de travailleurs de première ligne en santé. Donc, on va travailler fort pour s'assurer que les gens ont accès à ces besoins et ces services. On va aussi s'assurer que les gens peuvent aborder un logement. Je sais que c'est une crise maintenant. Nombreuses personnes ne peuvent pas aborder un logement. Donc, on va travailler fort pour rendre la vie plus abordable. Et je veux vous assurer, comme on a fait pendant la pandémie, on va travailler de façon pour s'assurer que le Parlement, que le gouvernement travaille pour vous, ça marche pour vous, ça fonctionne pour vous. Ça, c'est notre priorité. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. And with that, I'm ready for any questions you have.
Thank you. We will now proceed to questions. We ask journalists to ask one question and one follow-up. Merci. Nous allons maintenant prendre des questions. Nous demandons aux journalistes de prendre une question et une question de suivi. We'll start in the room today.
Hi, good afternoon. Christy Kirkup with the Globe and Mail. Just wondering, your caucus chair said yesterday that there was no agreement between your party and the government. So can you just be really precise? What were the nature of discussions that have taken place between your party and the government, and what were they focused on?
As it often happens in the beginning of Parliament, we've had conversations with the Prime Minister. I've been sent here to have conversations with the Prime Minister, and I'm going to find every opportunity I can to speak with the Prime Minister about the priorities that people have shared with me throughout the campaign, but also throughout my work in the constituency in Burnaby South and throughout the travels across Canada. People need help. They need to see action on the climate crisis. They want to make sure their lives are affordable so they can afford a home, they can afford to pay the bills. And I raise those concerns to the Prime Minister, and I'll continue to do that.
And just as a follow-up, would there be any concessions that your party would be willing to make on things like time allocation and closure on bills in exchange for NDP support and, in exchange for action on NDP priorities?
Like we did in the minority government previously during the pandemic, we use our position to fight for help for people, and we pushed the Liberal government to deliver more help to people. And that included some of the things that you've outlined. Some of the things that we did were to find ways to get more help to people financially. We fought to get a paid sick leave in place. We fought to increase the wage subsidy. So we're prepared to do similarly whatever we can to get more help to people, and we're ready to work with the government to make that happen. I want to be clear, we are still very critical of the government on a number of things. But when it comes to our goals are, can we get something that will make life better for people? And if we can, we'll work to achieve that.
Next question in the room, Annie.
Hi, it's Annie Bergeron-Oliver with CTV National News. Do you have any intention on entering into a formal agreement of any kind with the Liberals to prop them up for the foreseeable future?
There is no agreement of that nature before us. We are prepared to find ways to make the government work or the parliament work for people, and we're open to discussions about how we can make parliament work to deliver what people need. But there is no such agreement. Oui, oui, oui. Donc, on est prêt de travail pour s'assurer que le gouvernement, le Parlement fonctionne pour les gens, mais on n'a pas à ce moment aucun accord de travail ensemble, mais on est ouvert de trouver des façons de forcer ce gouvernement de livrer les marchandises pour les gens.
Earlier today, the Conservative leader said the Liberals are promising billions of dollars in new spending to, quote, buy your silence and avoid accountability and scrutiny. What do you think of O'Toole's characterization of both you and your party?
It's patently false. What we have done is to fight to get help for people. And we can look back in the last parliament and look exactly what we did. We absolutely fought to deliver more help for Canadians, but we were highly critical of the government on fighting Indigenous kids in court. We remain highly critical of the government. We think it's wrong that Justin Trudeau is fighting Indigenous kids in court. I'll continue to fight for those kids to make sure that they are not being prosecuted in court or that that court case doesn't continue. And instead of having a court case that continues, that there is a settlement that makes sure that Indigenous kids get equal funding and that they're not faced with injustice and discrimination. So we'll continue to be critical on those things. But I want to make it clear, what has Mr. O'Toole done since the last election? Since getting elected, the official opposition of Canada, the Canadian Conservatives, have been fighting to get special treatment for their MPs, special treatment to sit in Parliament unvaccinated, putting other people's lives at risk or other people's health at risk. That's been their priority. That's the only thing I've heard from them since the last election. That is a pretty abysmal failure of leadership. If the only thing that you're known for is fighting to get special treatment for your MPs, you're missing the plot. Right now, we need to fight for people. People told us they're worried about getting a home. We need to be fighting to make sure they can afford a home. People told us they're worried about the climate crisis. We need to be working on making sure people get the supports they need so that we can fight this climate crisis. That's what we're focused on. We're focused on people. Mr. O'Toole seems clearly focused on himself and getting special treatment for his MPs. That's the wrong thing to do.
Prochaine question dans la salle.
Je comprends, M. Singh, qu'il n'y a pas d'entente formelle en ce moment avec le Parti libéral, mais est-ce que vous cherchez à en obtenir une au moment où on se parle? Est-ce que vous pensez que ça serait une bonne idée s'il y en avait une entre le NPD et les libéraux?
Pour moi, ce n'est pas une question de si c'est une bonne idée d'avoir une entente. Pour moi, ce qui est important, c'est d'avoir un engagement de faire des choses importantes pour aider les gens. Donc, c'est une différence importante parce que pour moi, on n'a pas besoin d'avoir une entente. Moi, j'ai aucune raison d'avoir une entente. Mais j'ai beaucoup de motivation d'avoir des engagements pour livrer la marchandise pour les gens. Ça veut dire des engagements forts pour faire face à la crise du logement. Parce que je sais que les gens ont de la misère à trouver des maisons abordables. Donc ça, c'est quelque chose que je veux voir, des engagements. Je veux voir des actions concrètes pour faire face à la crise climatique. Donc, je veux voir des engagements pour prendre des mesures concrètes pour répondre aux besoins des gens. Et je veux voir ça. Et je suis ouvert à trouver des façons de faire ça.
Mais tu sais, par exemple, sur le logement, sur la question environnementale, ça fait partie du programme des libéraux. Donc, quels seraient les critères pour vous là, absolument essentiels pour qu'il y ait une entente formelle, juste pour qu'on comprenne là?
Pour moi, encore, il y a une entente formelle et je suis ouvert aux questions, à la question de comment on peut forcer ce gouvernement de travail pour les gens. Donc, je suis prêt pour utiliser ma position pour forcer ce gouvernement de faire des choses concrètes. Mais ce qu'on a vu depuis les 6 années passées, c'est un gouvernement qui donne des belles paroles. Ils ont parlé souvent de la crise du logement. Mais à ce moment, si on pose la question aux gens, est-ce que c'est plus facile aujourd'hui, après 6 ans du gouvernement libéral, d'acheter une maison, de trouver un logement abordable? Ils vont dire non, pas du tout. C'est plus difficile au lieu d'être plus facile. Et si on parle des actions sur la crise climatique, c'est clair que le bilan de M. Trudeau était un échec. Donc, On veut voir des engagements concrets. Et pour avoir ces engagements concrets, on est prêt de trouver des façons de travailler ensemble.
We'll take one more question in the room before checking the phone line.
They're a global national. So it sounds like you don't have a formal deal. You're not looking for a formal deal, but there are serious discussions happening where you can leverage some sort of influence over this prime minister and this government. So what are your top priorities, either one or two, that you have communicated to this prime minister to say to him, you will have the NDP support if you get this and that done within whatever time that you've set for him? Or have you given him that type of indication?
There are things that we agree on, and there's things that I've said really clearly that we could pass right away. We've long been calling for paid sick leave. We believe that there should not be a question in this country whether or not people have access to paid sick leave. And we can start by showing leadership at the federal level by legislating paid sick leave. I've called for expanding paid sick leave 22 times over the past over 18 months. Mr. Trudeau said no essentially every time. And now during the campaign, or the last campaign, he mentioned that, okay, they're in support of it. So I said, if you're actually in support of paid sick leave, you'll have our support to pass that right away. We believe that needs to happen. So there's things like that where there's agreement and we could pass that type of legislation immediately. Paid sick leave is an example of something concrete. In terms of broader goals, this is where we're concerned. We've heard the Liberals talk about their interest in tackling the housing crisis, but we haven't seen real concrete action. But there's nothing slowing us down. If they wanted to bring forward something that would actually make it easier for people to afford a home, or something that would tackle the out of control rise in price in housing, something that would tackle house flipping or tackle the pressures from foreign ownership, we would be prepared to work on those things right away. So when it comes to our top priorities, I would say making life more affordable, in general, affordability, and in that probably housing is the biggest concern, but making life more affordable, and secondly, the climate crisis. And those are right beside each other. They're the most important things that people have been talking about. And those are my two priorities. I want to see real action on making life more affordable. That's housing in particular. And I want to see real action on fighting the climate crisis, because this is the crisis of our times.
So alternatively, in those conversations, what did you say were your red lines, where you would say to the Prime Minister, we will not have our support on this, and we will bring you down as a government if you cross this red line? And added to that, how much time or how long of a leash does this government have?
Well, I said they shouldn't expect our support and take it for granted on anything. They just shouldn't expect that we're going to support anything unless it's actually going to help people. So if they want to bring in tax breaks that help out the super rich, they can't count on us for support. They could probably go to the Conservatives. If they want to do something that hurts workers, like they've done in the past, they're not going to be able to count on us for support. They can probably, again, work with the Conservatives as they've done in the past. But our support should not be taken for granted. We want to work together if it helps people. We will not work together if it hurts people.
We'll now take questions on the phone. Operator?
Please press star one at this time if you have a question. S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. And the first question, la première question, est de Hélène Bouzetti, les coop de l'information. La parole est à vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Singh. Alors, je vais que tout le monde a posé un peu la question sur l'entente formelle. Vous dites, bon, il n'y a pas d'entente, vous n'en avez pas nécessairement besoin d'une, mais juste pour clarifier, est-ce qu'il a été à un moment donné question d'une entente formelle? Est-ce qu'on est arrivé là à discuter une entente formelle de coalition, ou appelez ça comme vous voulez, pour maintenir le gouvernement 2 ou 3 ans?
Il n'y a pas du tout la question de coalition, et ça, c'est pas du tout le cas. Donc, il n'y a aucune désir de mon côté d'avoir une coalition. Ça, c'est un ferme non. L'idée de travailler ensemble, on a dit, comme on a dit dans les autres parlements, on est prêt de travailler ensemble si ça aide les gens. Si le gouvernement veut faire quelque chose qui va faire mal aux gens, qui va nuire les gens, donc il ne peut pas compter sur nous pour appuyer une telle mesure. Donc, notre priorité, c'est de trouver des façons de livrer les marchandises pour les gens, de trouver des façons d'aider les gens, d'améliorer leur vie. Et on est prêt de faire ça. Donc, ça, c'est effectivement ce qu'on a dit. J'ai parlé et j'ai expliqué. Je suis ici parce que les gens ont décidé d'avoir un gouvernement minoritaire. Les gens veulent qu'on fasse le travail nécessaire pour les aider et je suis prêt de faire ça.
Une des choses que le gouvernement
la réponse en anglais et puis votre suivi. Mais donnez-moi un moment, s'il vous plaît. There is no discussion at all of a coalition, and that is a firm no for me. There's not going to be any coalition at all. But I am prepared to find ways to work together. And I've made that clear since the beginning of the pandemic. I want to work to deliver more help to people. I want to make sure this parliament works for people. And I want to respect the decision that Canadians have made in this election. They sent us here to work for them. They expect us to work for them. And that means, in my mind, to make sure parliament actually works to deliver what people need. And so when it comes to helping people, I'm ready to work together. If it comes to hurting people or making a decision that's going to make life difficult for people, the Liberals can't count on my support. And we've laid out some of the key priorities. You know, we want to see action on fighting the climate crisis, and we want to see action on making life more affordable. Et puis, votre suivi?
Oui. Alors, une des priorités du gouvernement, là, c'est de faire adopter le prolongement des mesures d'aide, mais pour certaines catégories de travailleurs. Je crois comprendre que vous n'êtes peut-être pas très chaud à cette idée. Est-ce que ça a été un obstacle dans vos discussions? Et si vous pouviez aussi me dire, qu'en est-il du Parlement virtuel? Est-ce qu'on va revenir avec une portion virtuelle? Merci.
J'ai manqué une partie de votre première question. Donc, si vous pouvez
excusez-moi.
Non, pas du tout.
Alors, sur le prolongement des mesures d'aide pour les travailleurs, etc., je ne suis pas certaine que vous êtes d'accord. Donc, est-ce que ça faisait partie des discussions et est-ce que ça a permis, ça a fait achoper peut-être les discussions? Merci.
Merci. Oui, j'ai dit que je ne suis pas d'accord avec la décision de couper l'aide aux gens. Je pense que ce n'est pas surprenant. J'ai dit qu'on doit continuer l'aide aux gens. Au lieu de ça, j'ai dit que je suis ouvert à une alternative. Ça veut dire si on peut faire les changements nécessaires pour l'assurance-emploi pour qu'elle puisse couvrir plus de gens. On sait que les travailleurs autonomes, par exemple, ne sont pas couverts par l'assurance-emploi. Donc, ça, c'est un exemple de quelque chose qu'on doit régler. Donc, je suis ouvert aux alternatives des mesures d'aide aux gens si on a un changement dans l'assurance-emploi ou si on aussi règle des autres problèmes, comme maintenant pour nos aînés vulnérables. À ce moment, il y a une coupure de l'aide qu'ils reçoivent. Donc, c'est une autre chose que j'ai dit qu'on doit régler ça. Donc, ce sont les mesures si on parle de l'aide financière aux gens. Et deuxièmement, pour le Parlement hybride, je suis pour un Parlement hybride et je vais appuyer une telle mesure. Je pense que c'est important pendant cette pandémie, mais aussi en général pour les députés avec des petits-enfants, des responsabilités familiales. Pour plusieurs raisons, je suis pour une continuation d'un Parlement hybride.
On prendra une autre question au téléphone avant de retourner à la salle.
Once again, please press star one if you have questions. De nouveau, n'hésitez pas à appuyer sur étoile 1 pour toute question. Et la question suivante, the next question is from Mary Brooke, Island Social Trends. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Singh.
Hi there.
So along the lines of making life more affordable, after November 22nd, how quickly will the NDP bring forward legislation to declare that CERB was an emergency one-time benefit for low-income seniors, and therefore the GIS that's been clawed back could be established on 2019 income?
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's one of our immediate demands. We think that can be addressed right away. Vulnerable seniors are right now being targeted with clawbacks. It's incredibly difficult for them, and we want to see that fixed. There's also lots of vulnerable folks that required CERB that are unable to pay back their amount, and we want to look at amnesty for those folks that are vulnerable. So these type of measures are things that we're very open to, and we're looking at ways to make that happen.
Okay, and then the Minister's Office for Seniors has told Island Social Trends that, of course, seniors can individually go back through Service Canada and one by one, on a case-by-case basis, try to sort out what their income might be this year and sort of negotiate and figure out, if they could get their GIS back. How do you see that as a solution right now? And isn't that sort of a lot of use of government time to kind of, and a lot of seniors may not be able to cope with that?
Yeah, just on this issue of GIS, we know that the people that are on GIS are amongst the most vulnerable. To require additional difficult steps so that they can continue to get support is the wrong thing to do. And frankly, like you suggested, a bad use of our public sector resources, of our public service. We believe that there should no longer be clawbacks. Those that were on GIS should be able to continue on GIS and receive the full amount that they received before. That's what should happen moving forward. We want to end the clawbacks, and we want to see those vulnerable seniors continue to receive the support they need. In fact, we campaign on increasing support to seniors to lift every senior out of poverty. So we certainly don't want to see any cuts to the help they receive when we know people are barely getting by on what they receive. And these are seniors that are amongst the most vulnerable. And we, as a society, have to take care of them to make sure that they're supported and they're able to live a life of dignity. That's a real serious priority for us.
And we'll head back to the room for questions.
Alex Ballingall, Toronto Star.
Hey
just going back to this discussion about the formal agreement or you're saying there's no, whatever we're talking about, no coalition, firm no. And there's nothing on the table in terms of a formal agreement to support the government. But is that something that you're seeking or that you plan to seek? So a formal agreement to get some of your priorities enacted in exchange for supporting the government for a certain amount of time. Is that something that you want and that you are seeking?
It's not something I'm seeking, and it's not something I inherently want. What I want is to make sure people get help. And if there is an agreement to get people the help they need, I'm open to hearing the government out on that. But there is no agreement. There has been no specific offer made. But what I did do is lay out the things that I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the fact that people can't find a home right now. They're worried about housing. And I want to see some action on that. People are worried about the cost of living in general. So we want to see supports for people to deal with the cost of living. We know that people are worried about the climate crisis, and we want to see action on that. And we laid out some things that we want to see happen. We want to see this government stop fighting kids in court. We want to see this government start taking real action to support the healthcare worker shortage in provinces across this country. So we want to see some real specific things to help people through this difficult time. And to achieve those things, we're willing to hear the government out on ways we can make those things happen. But our goal is to make sure life is better for people and that we're fighting to get the help that people need. And we're open to making that happen. That does not mean that we're in any way are going to stop criticizing the mistakes that this government makes or when they're going down the wrong path, like fighting kids in court. We'll continue to raise those concerns. We'll continue to be critical of those decisions. But we want to find ways to make this parliament work for people, and we're open to discussions around that.
Just on your priorities that you're pushing, during the election you talked a lot about taxing the rich and having a wealth tax. I haven't heard you mention that today. Why is that? Is that not something you believe can be accomplished with the Liberals, or is that there's other priorities are more important at this point, or why aren't you talking about the wealth tax and taxing the rich?
I thought everyone knew my position on that really clearly. I've said that a lot during the campaign, but absolutely it remains my position, a firm position, that the pressure of this pandemic, the cost of this pandemic, the cost of the recovery should not fall on the shoulders of people. It should not fall on the shoulders of workers. It should not fall on the shoulders of small businesses. It should be the super wealthy that pay their fair share. And that remains my position.
Next question in the room.
Yeah, hi, Ryan Templeton, National Post. Really appreciate your clarity on the coalition discussions. Just wondering, would you entertain a confidence in supply agreement like the BC NDP did with the Greens in 2017?
So the general response, I want to make Parliament work for people. And so we have no such agreement on the table. There is no such discussion right now. We are open to finding ways to make sure this government does the things that people needed to do. And to that goal, I'm open to hearing thoughts on that. I'm open here to hearing the government out on that. But there is nothing before us. There is no such agreement before us. But I want to be really clear on my goal. My goal is there are a whole series of things that people have sent us here to do. And there are things that people are really worried about. And I want to make this government deliver on those things. So I'm willing to hear them out on what they're willing to do. And I'm here to push them to do more.
And I know during the campaign, a sort of theme of your campaign was that despite what he says and the promises that he makes, that you can't really trust Justin Trudeau. Does that make it difficult for you to entertain any kind of agreement on legislative priorities at any level?
Yes.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Tom Perry with CBC. So I'm just trying to get in my mind, do you see things in this session being pretty much the way they worked last time around, where the Liberals are going to be looking for support from you on some things, from the Bloc on other things? Or do you see it being like more of a, I'm going to say formal, maybe like a more of an informal agreement with your party that to get measures through?
So as it stands right now, it's going to be the same as before. If they want to come to us for support on a specific bill, they know where we stand on things. For example, if they wanted support on paid sick leave, it's not hard to guess. We would say yes for paid sick leave. If it's 10 legislated days of paid sick leave at the federal level, we would support something like that right away. So there's things like that where the government knows where we stand. And if they wanted to make it happen right now, if they wanted support on a legislation like that, we would be there. On childcare, they know where we stand. We support childcare. If there was a desire to make childcare permanent, which is what we want to see it happen, instead of agreements that get renewed every so often, so they're a formal part of our Canadian landscape, that people know that there will be affordable childcare. To make that permanent, we would be willing to support something like that. Measures to make housing more affordable, to stop the commodification of housing. If they wanted support on those type of measures, we're right here and ready to do that. On healthcare, they know that we believe in investing in healthcare. If they had any desire to invest in healthcare, they know they can count on us for support to make sure frontline healthcare workers get the funding they need so that the people can get the care they need if they get sick. So on things like that, they can count on our support. They know where we stand. But if they want to cut help to people, if they want to increase the giveaways to the super rich, if they want to hurt workers, they'll do what they've done in the past, which is to go to the Conservatives or the Bloc. And so it's clear where they can go, and we are prepared to work together to deliver help for people. But there is no agreement. There is no formal or informal agreement. Every vote will be taken vote by vote, and we are prepared to support where it's going to be in the benefit of people.
And you said today that it's on a coalition, it's a firm no. And I'm just wondering, we keep hearing from Mr. O'Toole warning of a radical agenda under a Liberal NDP coalition. What do you think he's doing with those kind of arguments?
He's making stuff up, I think. But more importantly, he's trying to distract from the fact that he has done nothing since getting elected to help people. And all he's been doing is focusing on himself and his party. And it's pretty embarrassing, if I can be really frank with you all, that you've got the leader of the official opposition that is focused in this pretty difficult time when people are uncertain about the future. They want to know what's going on. We got Alberta and Saskatchewan going through a healthcare crisis. We just heard from our member of parliament, Heather McPherson and Blake Desjardins, about the lack of access to ambulance care right now in Alberta. Like, things are bad. Instead of talking about what matters to people, like getting more healthcare funding, like getting more supports for frontline healthcare workers so that the people in these provinces that are hard hit will actually get support, he's trying to get special treatment for his MPs. He's trying to get unvaccinated people into the House of Commons, putting workers here at risk, putting the media at risk, putting healthcare or frontline workers here in the parliament at risk, people that have to work with the public that receive people as they come in, the security and other staff members here. They're putting workers at risk. That's their priority. Trying to get special treatment, that's their priority, and focusing on themselves. When we have been consistently saying, let's get help to people, let's stop the court case against Indigenous kids, let's deliver action on the climate crisis, let's make life more affordable, let's tackle the housing crisis, let's tackle the healthcare crisis. We're focused on people, and Mr. O'Toole seems to be focused on himself and his party. And that's to the detriment of people.
Prochaine question dans la salle, Marie.
Oui, bonjour, M. Singh. Allô,
oui,
de ce côté-ci.
J'ai entendu votre voix. J'ai dit
ouais, je suis là. Vous avez dit plusieurs fois que there's no agreement on the table. Je veux juste clarifier, est-ce qu'il y a eu une entente de proposer à un moment ou un autre entre maintenant et depuis l'élection?
Entre maintenant et depuis l'élection?
Depuis l'élection jusqu'à maintenant. Oh. Est-ce qu'il y a eu une entente de proposer depuis l'élection?
Non.
OK. Et les discussions, est-ce qu'elles sont toujours en cours, actives, ou est-ce que c'est juste que la ligne est ouverte puis vous allez répondre au téléphone si on vous appelle? Est-ce qu'il y a des conversations en ce moment qui ont cours?
Non, la porte est ouverte, comme vous avez donné la seconde exemple. La porte est ouverte pour faire fonctionner ce gouvernement pour délivrer la marchandise pour les gens. C'est toujours ouvert et j'ai eu des discussions au début du Parlement, au début de cette session, comme on a fait dans la prochaine session aussi. Et j'ai parlé de mes priorités et je vais continuer de dire ça. Et si je peux avoir une autre occasion de parler avec le Premier ministre, je vais le prendre.
Qu'on me coupe les discussions entre votre équipe et celle du premier ministre. Pas juste vous et M. Trudeau, là, mais des discussions at large entre néo-démocrates et libéraux.
Oh, les discussions.
Est-ce qu'elles sont en cours?
Les discussions entre tous les chefs, toutes les équipes, c'est quelque chose qui se passe tout le temps. Entre les autres partis, notre House Leader parle avec les autres partis tout le temps. Donc ça continue.
L'inaudible, la presse canadienne,
Oui.
je vais continuer dans le même ordre d'idée. On va essayer de rendre ça vraiment tout à fait clair. Depuis l'élection et jusqu'à aujourd'hui, les seules discussions entre libéraux et néo-démocrates, pas sur les leaders, pas sur la façon dont les choses fonctionnent, mais sur une possibilité de faire durer le gouvernement, les seules discussions qu'il y a eu, c'est cette rencontre, que vous avez eue avec M. Trudeau. C'est ça?
J'ai eu des discussions avec le Premier ministre. C'est la seule chose qui s'est passée. Et notre leader en Chambre a eu des discussions. Et je m'excuse, j'ai aussi eu des discussions avec les autres leaders aussi, les autres chefs aussi. Et il y avait des discussions avec notre équipe et les autres partis. Ça continue.
Donc, si les choses fonctionnent exactement comme elles fonctionnaient au dernier Parlement, au cas par cas, comment est-ce que vous pouvez être sûr que ça va durer plus longtemps que les 18 mois qu'a duré le dernier Parlement?
On ne sait pas, parce que dans la dernière élection, c'était les libéraux qui ont choisi de faire déclencher une élection. Donc, de mon part, je suis ici pour forcer ce gouvernement d'aider les gens. Et comme j'ai dit dans le passé, pendant la pandémie, j'ai dit clairement que c'est une mauvaise décision de faire déclencher une élection pendant la pandémie. Je continue d'avoir cette même opinion. Et c'est les libéraux qui ont décidé de faire déclencher une élection.
Et parce que j'ai l'impression que je n'ai pas tout à fait attaché toutes les cordes, parce que la rumeur est courte depuis pas mal de jours maintenant. Donc, vous avez seulement discuté avec M. Trudeau à propos de ça. Est-ce que des gens dans votre cabinet, dans celui de M. Trudeau, ont eu des discussions sur la façon de faire durer le gouvernement depuis la dernière élection ou non? Tout ça, ça a été des vues de l'esprit inventées par des journalistes.
On a eu des discussions avec les autres partis depuis l'élection à plusieurs reprises. Donc, ces discussions avec tous les partis, j'ai parlé avec les autres chefs aussi. Donc, ces discussions, ça continue, ça existe.
On sait de quoi on parle. On parle libéraux, néo-démocrates, essayent de s'entendre pour que le gouvernement ne tombe pas. Là-dessus, il y a eu vous et M. Trudeau, vous avez discuté.
Oui.
À part ça, rien d'autre.
Oui, rien d'autre.
Parfait. Merci.
J'ai juste une petite question par rapport à Air Canada. Ça sera vraiment pas long.
Oui.
Le PDG d'Air Canada a dit aujourd'hui, en fait, il s'est engagé à prendre des cours de français. Est-ce que c'est suffisant pour vous?
L'idée de prendre les cours, de s'engager, d'apprendre la langue, c'est une bonne chose de faire en général. Mais pour une service comme une service aviation comme ça, les gens sont fâchés que des propos que le PDG a dit que je n'ai pas besoin de parler français au Québec, je peux me débrouiller sans avoir cette capacité. Donc, je pense que les gens sont fâchés avec ces propos. Ces propos n'étaient pas sensibles aux sensibilités au Québec. Donc, je pense que ça, c'est vraiment le problème. Mais l'idée de prendre les cours, c'est une bonne chose à faire.
We'll check once again the telephone for any questions. Opérateur.
The next question, la question suivante est d'Hélène Buzetti, les coops de l'information. La parole est à vous.
Oui, monsieur Singh, sur un tout autre sujet, parce que vous avez parlé vaguement de la vaccination des députés. Vous, est-ce que vous êtes en faveur d'une obligation vaccinale pour tous les travailleurs, dans le fond?
Pour tous les travailleurs. Je suis pour une vaccination mandatoire pour les travailleurs de santé et de première ligne, les gens qui ont contact avec les gens. en travaillant toujours avec les syndicats et avec les travailleurs et travailleuses, mais je suis pour la vaccination, oui.
Mais ma question, c'est est-ce que vous pensez que tous les milieux de travail devraient rendre la vaccination obligatoire?
Comme j'ai dit, il y a 2 éléments. Donc, j'ai parlé en santé. Je pense que c'est clair, c'est important, c'est essentiel. Et pour les travailleurs qui ont des contacts avec la public, je pense que c'est aussi clair, c'est important. Et je suis d'accord avec l'obligation dans le milieu de travail fédéral. C'était proposé, je suis d'accord avec ça.
And one more question in the room.
One more question?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, in terms of gauging the Prime Minister's degree of openness to working with you, would you say on a spectrum he's more willing to work with you this time around, less willing, kind of in the middle? Like, just give us some type of flavor. The last time I saw you here in person, you were saying, we want to work with you, reach out. We haven't had the olive branch. Reach out, Prime Minister. There's been a discussion. So can you just kind of give us some sense of where he's at and the degree of openness that you sense in terms of hearing you out on policy?
You're looking for the juice, and I'm not giving you the juice today, I don't think. So we are open, and there is not a closure on their part. So that is what I can give you. But I couldn't say, because I'm not saying this in a flippant way. Like, I'm happy to keep on fighting for people the way we fought for people in the last parliament. I'm content to do that. If the government wants to do more, if they're interested in doing more, I'm willing to hear them. So it's kind of in their court if that's what they want to do. So I'm open is all I'm saying, and I'm also happy to keep on fighting for people the way we did in the past. So I can't really give you much juice.
This is all the time we have for today.
We'll be able to tackle this problem. UNDP is delighted to partner with UNEP and WMO in launching this very, very important initiative, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being so delightfully brief. That was Ms. Rao Munari. I'd like now, please, to turn to some of those countries that have made such crucial roles in establishing the SOF by giving such incredibly important political support. I'd like to turn, please, to the Prime Minister of Cabo Verde, His Excellency José Correa e Silva. Let me ask you, first of all, why is scaling up adaptation such a high priority for your country?
So thank you for the invitation. All protocol observed. Directed to the question, Cabo Verde sits with high economic and environmental vulnerabilities and strong exposure to climate change. We have an active volcano and a territory where the ocean represents about 19% of the country's surface. Monitoring meteorological and climate phenomena is important to predict and mitigate their effects. Cabo Verde needs technical and financial